Every morning on Today, Savannah Guthrie appeared calm, confident, and completely in control. Under the bright lights of Studio 1A, she delivered breaking news, interviewed world leaders, and guided millions through historic moments, all with that reassuring presence viewers trusted. But behind the polished smile, there was another story. What the cameras didn't show were the silent battles unfolding off-air, the early mornings that followed sleepless nights, the pressure of motherhood colliding with one of the most demanding jobs in television, the private fears she carried while sitting at the anchor desk, pretending everything was fine. There were moments of doubt she never admitted publicly, moments when criticism cut deeper than she allowed anyone to see, moments when her health scares forced her to confront the possibility of losing the very thing her career depended on, her vision. And then came the professional storm that changed everything, when the departure of longtime co-anchor Matt Lauer shook the foundation of the show and placed her at the center of national scrutiny. Through it all, she remained composed. But now, Savannah Guthrie is speaking more openly than ever before. Not about scandal, not about secrets meant to shock, but about the truth she carried quietly for years, the pressure, the fear, the faith, and the strength it took to keep showing up. Because sometimes, the strongest faces on television are fighting the hardest battles off screen. And this time, she's ready to tell the full story. For more than a decade, Savannah Guthrie has been one of the most recognizable faces in American morning television. Sitting at the anchor desk of Today, she greets millions with composure, intelligence, and warmth. To viewers, she appears steady, the calm presence guiding conversations with presidents, celebrities, and everyday Americans alike. But long before the cameras turn on each morning, Savannah's day begins in darkness. Her alarm sounds when most of the country is still asleep. The schedule is relentless. Preparation starts hours before broadcast, and by the time she is on air, she has already lived half a day. The polished delivery audiences see is the result of discipline, exhaustion, and mental focus that few outside the industry truly understand. Behind the scenes, the pressure is immense. Morning television is not simply about reading headlines. It demands instant analysis, emotional intelligence, and the ability to pivot from light-hearted interviews to devastating breaking news within seconds. Savannah has mastered that transition, yet mastering it came at a personal cost. When she became a mother later in life, everything shifted. Balancing the responsibility of raising young children while maintaining one of the most high-profile jobs in media tested her in ways she hadn't anticipated. There were mornings she left home before sunrise, quietly closing the door so she wouldn't wake her sleeping kids. There were evenings when exhaustion weighed heavily, but bedtime stories still needed to be read. She rarely spoke publicly about the guilt that followed her, the constant internal question of whether she was giving enough to her family while giving so much to her career. On screen, she radiated confidence. Off screen, she wrestled with the universal fears of working parents everywhere. Then came the health scare that forced her to slow down. A retinal tear caused by an accident at home required surgery and threatened her vision, an especially frightening prospect for someone whose profession depends on reading teleprompters, scripts, and subtle facial cues. While she shared updates professionally, what viewers didn't see was the quiet anxiety that accompanied that period. The late-night worries, the uncertainty, the realization that even the most stable careers can feel fragile in an instant. Returning to the studio after surgery required courage, she resumed her seat with the same calm demeanor, but internally, she carried a deeper awareness of vulnerability. It was a reminder that strength does not mean invincibility. Professionally, she also navigated one of the most turbulent moments in the history of the show. When longtime co-anchor Matt Lauer exited amid controversy, the atmosphere shifted overnight. The broadcast was under national scrutiny. Emotions ran high. Trust had to be rebuilt in real time, live on television. Savannah found herself in a delicate position, balancing personal feelings, professional integrity, and the responsibility of leading during uncertainty. Every word mattered. Every expression was analyzed. She maintained composure, but the weight of that period lingered long after the headlines faded. Through all of this, faith quietly anchored her. though she has not always emphasized it publicly. Savannah has spoken more openly in recent years about the role her Christian faith plays in her life. During moments of doubt and exhaustion, it became a source of grounding, a reminder that identity is not defined solely by ratings, public opinion, or professional achievement. The truth she carried for years wasn't dramatic or scandalous. It was deeply human. She doubted herself. She feared failure. She worried about her children. She felt the sting of criticism. She struggled to balance ambition and motherhood. She experienced vulnerability in a career that rewards composure. As the years passed, the pressure surrounding Savannah Guthrie didn't ease, it intensified. Success in national television is rarely stable. Every interview, every headline, every reaction on social media can shift public perception overnight. Savannah understood this reality better than most. Sitting at the center of today meant she was not just reporting the news, she was part of it. The turning point wasn't one single dramatic event. It was accumulation. The early mornings. The scrutiny. The responsibility of holding together a show millions relied on. Then came the season that tested her resilience in a deeper way. When longtime co-anchor Matt Lauer departed amid controversy, the atmosphere inside the studio changed overnight. The set looked the same. The lights were just as bright. But emotionally, everything felt different. Savannah was suddenly navigating grief, shock, and professional obligation all at once, and she had to do it live. In front of the country. There was no time to privately process, no opportunity to step away and gather herself. Instead, she addressed the audience with honesty, choosing transparency over scripted detachment. That moment revealed something viewers hadn't fully seen before: vulnerability behind the scenes. The transition required strength few could imagine. Trust had to be rebuilt. Team dynamics had to shift. Public confidence had to be restored. And through it all, Savannah became a stabilizing force, not because she was unaffected, but because she chose steadiness and uncertainty. At the same time, her life at home continued moving at full speed. School drop-offs, family dinners, bedtime routines. She often moved from emotionally charged broadcasts straight into motherhood without pause. The contrast was jarring. One moment she was discussing national headlines, the next helping with homework. That duality forced her to confront a deeper question: who was she outside of the anchor chair? For years, identity and career had been closely intertwined. She had worked tirelessly to build credibility, from her legal background to her rise through journalism ranks. But seasons of upheaval made her reevaluate what truly defined her. It was during this period that her faith became less private and more foundational. Not performative, not public for appearance, but grounding. She has since shared that in moments of exhaustion and doubt, prayer was less about asking for success and more about asking for clarity and peace. She began letting go of the impossible standard of perfection. Savannah has admitted that criticism once hit her hard. Online commentary, media analysis, constant judgment. But with time, she realized that striving to satisfy everyone was an unwinnable battle. The real work was internal, learning to separate public noise from personal worth. That realization changed her. She became more comfortable acknowledging mistakes, more willing to speak openly about fear and uncertainty, more aware that strength doesn't come from appearing flawless. It comes from continuing forward despite imperfection. What many viewers interpreted as composure was, in reality, discipline layered over vulnerability. She still felt pressure. She still worried. She still had moments of self-doubt before major interviews. But she stopped pretending those feelings meant weakness. Instead, they became part of her growth. The truth she hid for years wasn't explosive. It was relatable. She was navigating the same insecurities and balancing acts that countless working parents experience, just under brighter lights. And perhaps that is what makes this season of honesty so powerful. Because when someone who seems effortlessly confident admits they, too, struggle, it changes the narrative. Savannah Guthrie didn't break her silence to shock anyone. She did it to remind people that strength is often quiet, and resilience is rarely visible from the outside. By the time Savannah Guthrie entered her second decade on Today, something had shifted. She was no longer simply the accomplished journalist who had climbed her way to the anchor desk. She had become a leader, not just in title, but in presence. The transformation wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with an announcement or a dramatic reinvention. It revealed itself in subtle ways, in how she handled tense interviews, in how she supported colleagues on air, in how she carried herself during moments when the show faced criticism or scrutiny. Earlier in her career, Savannah admits she often felt she had something to prove. With a background in law and years of hard news reporting, she fought to establish credibility in a space that can sometimes prioritize personality over substance. She prepared relentlessly. She pushed herself harder than anyone else could. But experience and hardship softened that edge. The professional storms she endured taught her that leadership isn't about dominance. It's about steadiness. When the show experienced public turbulence, when headlines turned uncomfortable, when emotions inside the studio ran high, she learned that calm can be more powerful than control. Colleagues began describing her as grounding. Viewers noticed a deeper layer of empathy in her interviews. Conversations with public figures felt less performative and more human. She listened longer. She allowed silence when it mattered. She asked hard questions, but without spectacle. Off camera, her priorities became clearer. Motherhood reshaped her understanding of success. Ratings still mattered. Journalism still mattered. But being present for school milestones, family dinners, and ordinary evenings at home began to carry equal weight. She became more protective of her private life, not out of secrecy, but out of intention. The more she grew personally, the more authentic she became professionally. Savannah has acknowledged that stepping fully into leadership required letting go of the fear of being disliked. National television guarantees criticism. Every expression, every tone, every phrasing can be dissected online within seconds. For years, she internalized much of it. Eventually, she stopped trying to outrun it. Instead, she focused on preparation, integrity, and purpose. If she did her homework, asked fair questions, and stayed true to her values, the rest was noise. Faith also played a larger role during this evolution. While she has never positioned herself as overtly preachy, she has become more comfortable acknowledging the spiritual foundation beneath her resilience. In interviews outside the newsroom, she has spoken about prayer not as ritual, but as recalibration, a way to return to center when the world feels loud. That grounding allowed her to lead with less fear. She began mentoring younger journalists more intentionally. She shared stories of early insecurities. She admitted mistakes she once would have quietly buried. In doing so, she dismantled the illusion that successful careers are linear and effortless. What once felt like secrets, exhaustion, doubt, pressure, became lessons she was willing to pass on. There's also a noticeable difference in how she approaches interviews now. Whether speaking with political leaders or cultural icons, she blends firmness with humanity. Tough questions still come. Accountability still matters. But there is less urgency to perform and more commitment to understanding. That confidence didn't come from ego. It came from surviving seasons that forced her to confront who she was beyond television. Savannah Guthrie's silence wasn't about hiding scandal. It was about processing growth privately before sharing it publicly. Now, as she speaks more openly about the weight she carried, her leadership feels less like a role and more like a reflection of her true self. She is still composed, still sharp, still commanding when the moment requires it. But underneath that composure is something deeper, perspective. And that perspective may be the most powerful evolution of all. Now, as Savannah Guthrie enters a more reflective phase of her career, her focus has shifted from mere achievement to lasting impact. She has spent decades in front of millions of viewers, reporting, questioning, and guiding. But what she values most now is influence grounded in authenticity. The lessons she has learned through personal struggle, professional turbulence, and relentless scrutiny have shaped her into someone who leads with both clarity and compassion. Savannah's approach to interviews and storytelling has matured. She no longer aims solely to extract headlines or memorable sound bites. Instead, she prioritizes understanding, connection, and honesty. When she speaks with colleagues or public figures, her goal is not just to get answers, but to create a space where real conversation can happen. That depth is something viewers have noticed. Even if they don't consciously label it, a sense that she sees beyond the surface, that she listens carefully, and that she balances firmness with empathy. This evolution is equally evident in her mentorship of younger journalists. Savannah is intentional about passing on the wisdom she has earned through years of pressure, uncertainty, and personal growth. She shares her experiences of doubt and perseverance, not as cautionary tales, but as guidance. She encourages aspiring reporters to embrace vulnerability, to acknowledge the weight of their responsibilities, and to maintain integrity in the face of criticism. Her mentorship demonstrates that strength is not about perfection. It is about persistence, honesty, and resilience. Behind the camera, Savannah remains deeply devoted to her family. Motherhood continues to shape her priorities and perspective. She recognizes that her influence is not limited to the newsroom. It extends to the lives she touches at home, in her community, and through her professional example. Balancing these spheres has never been easy, but the lessons she has learned about grace, patience, and presence have made her more effective and compassionate in every role she undertakes. Faith continues to anchor her, providing the quiet reassurance needed to navigate both professional challenges and personal uncertainties. She has spoken about prayer and reflection as tools for maintaining perspective, reminding herself that identity and worth are not defined by ratings or public opinion. This foundation allows her to confront obstacles with poise and to embrace each day with purpose. Savannah's willingness to speak openly about her struggles, fears, and personal growth marks a new level of transparency in her public life. It reveals a deeper truth about the human side of someone who has always appeared composed on television, that strength is forged through adversity, that resilience grows in moments of vulnerability, and that authenticity can be more influential than any carefully constructed image ultimately. Savannah Guthrie's story is not just about her career or public achievements. It is about endurance, growth, and the courage to reveal the person behind the anchor desk. By breaking her silence and sharing the truths she once kept private, she offers viewers a model of resilience, leadership, and authenticity that resonates far beyond the studio. Her legacy is not merely what she reports, it is how she has learned to live, lead, and inspire with integrity and heart, showing that the most profound strength often emerges from the willingness to be human.